All right, this will be a fun podcast. This is like the application of PMP stuff in the real world. So it's going to be a lot of learning in this, and we're just going to have a free-form conversation with a guy you're going to meet in 2 seconds. So, Peter, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you? Where you come from? Give me a little background, dude, professionally.
Yeah, well, first of all, Scott, I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. Obviously, you love talking about this stuff, and I do also. So, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Peter Younes, and I'm a firefighter. And I'm a fire captain. And so right now I'm the executive officer for our fire department. And so I found that more and more I'm doing a lot of project management. And so a couple of years ago, I just I got into the PMP, got into a PMP course through UC Irvine, and I kind of was the first thing that jumped out was like, man, this is like really it felt very technical and kind of
Yeah.
like business worldy, which doesn't probably no surprise, doesn't really sync with firefighter vernacular, firefighter vocabulary. And so I found your course, which I thought was great, kind of spoke to the firefighter in me, like, oh yeah, I can actually understand these concepts.
Cool.
So anyways, yeah, so that's kind of how I got into the project management world. And since then, so kind of the last 2 years, man, it's just been great. So I've been using a lot of these concepts. We've been kind of running some different projects in the fire department. We got some good agile projects we've run, some hybrid projects. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background and my kind of journey into project management.
That's pretty cool, dude. So this is exciting because like people out there can say a lot of times it's like, oh, there's this PMI world that's this ivory tower thing that's not related to the real world. And you kind of went the other way where you were like, I'm going to learn these principles. I don't want to speak for you, dude. But like you took the principles and then you're just like went and ran and tried stuff. Like what gave you like the confidence or the chutzpah, whatever you're gonna call it, to go and take concepts and put it in a place where maybe it's not commonly used?
Yeah, man, that's right on, Scott. So, I think one of the things that clicked with me was when I got promoted to captain, I was started getting involved in a lot of these projects, and it dawned on me that whether or not we structure these projects the right way, we're going to run them anyway. And we're leaving money and time and energy on the table because they're disorganized or, we don't have a solid scope document. So that kind of, gave me I don't even know if I want to say it this way, but like, what do we have to lose? We're not doing a great job of organizing these projects. And so why don't we try some structured approaches? Why don't we try utilizing some of this project stuff? And then we had a really, really big project a year and a half ago now, where we had to open up a pharmacy in very short period of time. And so this was like a great kind of training ground for me to use a lot of these concepts. And then it went great. We used basically, I guess it was more of a hybrid approach, but we utilized a hybrid approach, which was really heavy on some agile stuff. We had a project backlog. We were utilizing a scrum master. And I was shocked. I was like, man, this is really catching on. But there was one of the things I learned though, and we've talked a little bit about this, Scott, was that when you take those project management terms and you try to graft them onto the fire department or whatever your industry is, you gotta like make it your own. And so it jumped out at me that there was a couple of things we were going to have to tweak, like the metrics, the terminology, just some like basic things that once we adjusted it, once we tweaked it and kind of contorted it a little bit, we actually like found a system that works for us. And so, man, the last 2 or 3 years, it's been like a real training ground. These different approaches, different projects, different communication styles. It's just been really cool.
We got so much to talk about. This might go an hour and a half. Who knows? So like, let's go back to that first project. Guys and girls like out there, I've met a lot of your people since then. Obviously awesome people, really want to make a big difference. You work in the public sector, so you're there to serve. Like literally, you're out there saving lives and all these different things. It's beautiful. What was it like when you were in there, like introducing some of these things? Like they're professionals in the sense that you got what you guys work, but these are new concepts. Was there resistance or what was the reality of that, man?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And the reality is that firefighters have just an inherently reactive personality type. And that's just
Hmm.
because, we go to fires and you don't know what you're going to get. You show up and whatever you see when you get there, you just deal with it. And
Yeah.
we take that, unfortunately, we take that mentality into projects. And so we're very used to, hey man, we'll just figure it out when we get in there. We'll get in there and we'll see what we got, and whatever it is, we'll deal with it.
I
And
hear
yeah, I
you.
mean that works on fires, but it doesn't work as well in projects. And so when I first got started in this, the first few things I heard were, this is too much planning in the beginning. Why don't we just jump right in? Let's just get started. Why don't we just jump, attack the sort of low hanging fruit kind of stuff. And the other thing was that the terminology, it just like a lot of the terminology in the PMI, the
Hmm.
PMBOK, or the way that project management is discussed, I think can be it's a little complicated. And so people are like, hey, look, I don't know what you mean by a risk register. I don't know what a scrum master is. I don't know what the agile artifacts are. I don't know what any of that stuff means. And so a lot of the pushback that I got initially was kind of like, hey, do we really need this? Like, why don't we just get in there? And I don't really understand what this stuff means. Um, but I think a lot of that stuff is, and look, I've been a firefighter my whole adult life. I was a forest firefighter for a little while in Montana, and then I've been a city firefighter for a large metropolitan department for almost 15 years now. And so this is all I know. But I would guess that any industry that sort of moves into project management to get started is going to face a lot of those challenges. Like, hey, why do we really need this? We have our own system and it's so great. What do we
Yeah.
need this new thing for? So those were, I think, some
Mm.
of the big challenges that I saw kind of right away when we tried to start
How'd
this.
you make the case? Like, dude, so they were like, hey, let's go into it. We'll figure it out. There's like that push to go, we'll low hang fruit. We'll knock it out. How does one make the case? Or how did you make the case to them? Did you say, please help me? Like, or what was the approach to like get them to like take a chance, do some upfront planning, and then go from there? How'd you get it started, dude?
Yeah. So I think that the way I would explain this is, and this is just something I believe for projects generally, but it's about
Uh,
momentum. And so we
okay.
built some momentum. I had a couple early projects, and just anytime you're a captain in a fire department, generally speaking, you're going to get projects. They're going to give you
Okay.
projects. And so I had a few smaller projects. I had a project where we had this Bluetooth functionality. So we have our air
Mhm.
packs that we wear in fires, and we have our radios.
Yeah.
And the old school ways, you just kind of talk into the radio, which is fine on like a car accident or something like that. But once you put that mask on, your voice
Hmm.
gets very garbled. The communication is difficult to hear. And so there was this technology that we wanted to implement where there's a Bluetooth microphone in your mask, and it
Nice.
connects basically your air pack to your radio. So one of my first projects was, hey, let's trial this equipment out. Let's set up a trial, test it out at a few different fire stations, see if it works, see if it's safe, and then if we like it, we'll deploy it across 23 fire
Hmm.
stations. And what I found was people really liked the way that a structured, organized project feels, because when your leadership asks you, hey, how's it going with this project? Instead of saying like, I don't know, I think it's going okay, or I don't know, I feel like it's not, you can say things like, hey, we're under budget by this amount of money, or we're on schedule. These are the risks that we forecasted. Here's what we've done to
Yeah.
mitigate them. This is the scope. This is exactly what I'm going to deliver for you. What I found was people were really receptive to that. They're like, man, this is great, actually. And so,
Yeah.
I think the proof really is in the pudding. And then when that and a few other projects got underway, then we had this big mega project, and that's kind of like the, hey, look, you kind of have these smaller ones, and then all of a sudden now it's trial by fire. And this was just a great opportunity for us to show, hey, listen, it's not the case that all these other industries out there have tried project management and it works, but we're so special and so different that it can't work
Mm.
here. It's just like, what do we need to change and adapt so that those concepts that have been, pretty thoroughly tested and proven over many, many decades, what do we need to do to take that and make it work here? So it's not like, you're trying and you're inventing something new. You're adapting an already like pretty thoroughly proven philosophy for your specific, ecosystem or work environment.
Dude, that is amazing how you take like the thing in there. And I think there's genius in what y'all are doing, I believe, where you're not just saying, I'm going to take an existing system, I'm going to take it from a book, and we're going to clamp it down on our industry. Therefore, it will work. And that seems to
Yeah.
be like an ill-fitting shoe in a sense or whatever. But you're like crafting it like an artist and like, respecting where you are and respecting where the other people came from to make it like it work. So that's awesome. So you talked a lot about terminology. What
Yeah.
are some of the things that you're like, hey, this is what PMI calls it, this is what we call it because this resonates with us? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you asked that, Scott. There's a couple things I'd like to talk about. So really what I've found is when I'm explaining these concepts, I like to keep it as simple as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So when I explain okay, like we've got our, we're going to put together our scope. How do we make a scope? We get our requirements. The requirements are like bricks. When we get enough of them, we can build our scope. And then we're going to make our activities list. We'll take that scope and we'll decompose it into an activities list. But what I'll say is, hey, you know what? Let's just call it a to-do list. You have a to-do list at your house. You make one. This is we take our requirements and we're going to make a scope, and then we're going to break it down into a great big giant to-do list. And then
Mm-hmm.
so things like that, but also just the roles. So project manager is one that I think people sort of intuitively understand. But when we were on our pharmacy project, which was a very fast-paced project, we had a really aggressive tempo. We were doing a meeting every week, and many meetings in between. And I wanted essentially a scrum master. I wanted somebody who can operate as a scrum master, move between the different teams, make sure that things were moving the way they were supposed to, early
Mm-hmm.
identification of problems, bringing them to me. And so I just called it a risk manager. I was like, hey guys, there's risks that are going
Okay.
to pop up, communication breakdowns, problems that we don't foresee. And so we're going to have someone whose job it is to just move between the teams, keeping an eye on the risks. And we're just going to call him a
Mm.
risk manager. And it's going to be this guy. So
That's cool. It's yeah. Keep going.
yeah, no, just things like that. And then things like just terminology that people already resonate with. Like we put together
Right.
this really cool visualization of risk, like because with this particular project there was a lot of risk involved, and so I put together this visualization of the risk and just simply called it a risk map. Nothing fancy, like this is the risk map. And firefighters
Nice.
really like to keep things simple. We don't like hyper complicated terminology or terms. So just like I was just going through looking at what are the terms that people aren't going to intuitively understand. Project manager, you intuitively know. Scrum master, you do not. And so take those terms, made them as simple as I possibly can, gave a brief explanation. And then there's a lot of I think one of the things I found was there's a lot of on the job training. So we were in these meetings, it's a 1 hour meeting or whatever. The first
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes of it, I would just use as an opportunity to like, hey guys, let's just, before we jump in, we're going to talk about the risk manager. Ben is going to be our risk manager. This is what his job is. You don't need to know this, but in the project management world, they'd call it a scrum master. And this is what he's going to do. So just
Yeah.
a very small amount of time at the beginning of our meetings. And I'm talking about like a very small amount of time, introduce
Yeah.
a concept and then roll on with the meeting. And I found that people really resonated with that. They liked, learning a little, brief concept at the beginning and then seeing it actually play out through the meeting, through the project, wherever.
Dude, this is amazing. Like, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. As you're doing this and you're working more and more projects, like, are you starting to build like mini project managers or little devotees, or is it starting to? I'm very tentative to use the word catch fire with the present company, but like, is it starting to grow out there, or is it still a one man show? How does it work with y'all?
Well, yeah. So one of the things, so once we got rolling and we demonstrated like, here's the value of project management. Cause I think at
Mm-hmm.
first people hear it and some of the terms can sound kind of goofy and they listen to it and like, yeah, I don't really see how this works. I'm sure it works for banks and software companies and everybody else, but like, we're so very different. It can't ever work for us. But once you show, hey, look, the value's here. Okay. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of taking the time and investing to make it work for us. But once that value is there, then we're very fortunate in the fire department I work for. We have a really forward-looking
Mm-hmm.
administration, forward-looking leadership. Once I demonstrated the value, they were like, "Yeah, we need to increase the velocity here. Like, let's replicate this so that we can get
Yeah.
more done." To borrow an agile term, and
Yeah.
so we've created a pipeline where we've got a bunch of people, 6, 7 guys right now that we're running through your program, and so the idea there is let's get more project managers, and then as they're going through that project
Yeah.
management class, because if they just get their PMP and then they take those concepts and just immediately try to run off into the fire department and use them, they're going to run into a lot of the issues that I ran into. And so what I've been doing is, as they go through that pipeline, I'm bringing them in on the projects that I'm working on, and I'm letting them be the project manager, and I'm essentially the assistant project manager. I'm saying, hey, this is the part of the project where we want to get the scope, and here's how we're going to do that. Collect our requirements. We're going to, do a Microsoft shared document. We're going to send it to all our stakeholders. We'll create a basic table. We'll have everybody put their requirements in, and then we'll take all that, sit down with the project sponsor. This is what's in scope. This is what's out of scope. And I'm making it with them so they can kind of see, all right, here's what PMI says. Here's what I'm learning in my PMP school. And here's how we actually specifically use it for our environment.
And you said you're the assistant to this individual. So you're putting them at the table to say, hey, I know you learned it. There's no risk here because I got you, but your hands, your fingers, let's go right there. Why did you choose to do that? Because a lot of people would go, you watch, hold the flashlight, look over my shoulder, but you chose, let's go. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the firefighter in me. Like the way that firefighters, the way that we do things is, someone teaches it to you and then it's like, all right, get out there and do it. And, these are the people that are going through this pipeline are real self-starters. And, like you said, the risk is limited because, I'm there with them. I'm working with them on the project. I'm there for the big decision points. I'm helping them get the project documentation up and running. I think when you are in charge of something, you get ownership over it. You feel that sense, a deep sense of ownership. And that's something that's really important in the fire service, is having that sense of ownership, feeling like this is mine and I'm going to see it succeed because I own it. I feel a deep sense of I hate to keep saying ownership, but I feel like I own this and I want to see it through. And so I think that when you put people in charge of stuff, you're going to get buy-in, you're going to get that ownership, you get a stronger accountability from them. And so that was kind of the thought process. And then also, just like I was saying, firefighters are very used to just jump right in there.
Yeah, I love that. And I imagine that having their hands on the wheel, starting to do everything you said and own it, they're going to have to start to say, hey, you're going to have to explain it to a person, or you're going to have to interface with a stakeholder, or you're going to have to update this document. They're going to have to start developing those gears like you did about how can I explain it? And then how did that go? I would imagine those conversations, they start to develop their own language and get into the swing of it otherwise they wouldn't have done it, right? They would have been just watching you and be like, yeah, I can do it, but they wouldn't have known. And who knows, they might have, so.
That's right. Really awesome. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's awesome.
And then, if I could just say one more thing on that, Scott,
dude,
one of the things that I found was, we teach, when you're a new acting officer or a new lieutenant, one of the things you learn is that you want to build that, we call it our slide deck or your Rolodex of images. And, no fire is going to be the same. No gunshot or cardiac arrest, no fire alarm is going to be the same, but they all fit, broadly speaking, into categories. Okay, this is a smells and bells. This is a structure fire. This is a car fire. This is a cardiac arrest. And so once you've seen enough of the different types of calls, you have a blueprint to use. And even though they're all going to have their own, this one's a little bit different because of this reason and so on.
Yeah.
You can utilize similar approaches. And what I started to see over time as I managed more and more projects in the fire department was that they tend to fit into these consistent categories. We have technology rollouts, or you have a policy development, or you're what I call an architecture project where you're building something new that wasn't there before, or a process optimization. Hey, we got this transfer process and every time we do it, something gets missed. And so let's come up with a new way to standardize this process. And we've got to interface with the stakeholders. And so because there was those categories that I was like, oh man, this is a lot like that other project. What I was able to do is, as I'm working with these people that I'm training up, is say, hey, listen, this is a policy development project. And so on these kind of projects, we're going to write a new uniform manual, or we're going to develop a new promotional process, or promotional eligibility process, or hey, this is a technology rollout. We're pushing out a new mental health app, or we're pushing out Bluetooth technology, or hey, this is an architecture, we're building a pharmacy that didn't exist, or we're going to design a new fire station, whatever. And so helping them understand that, yes, projects are all going to be different. There's going to be variables with each of them that make them unique, their own little, unique snowflake, but you're going to see consistent through lines, and then you can leverage that knowledge to say, okay, I'll start here with these policy developments. It's all about identifying the stakeholders. You've got that uniform manual. We got HR that's got to approve it. Legal's got to take a look at it. We're going to need to have our logistics people who are going to have to order these uniforms involved.
Yeah.
Stakeholders are critical for those kinds of projects. So just, the little, nuances of each category, because I think that helps people figure out where work should get, or how work should get organized.
Yeah, man, this is so good. You don't even know. The people that are listening to this, like, you know, podcast guys from my side, and heck, you should take this and post it on your podcast too, as well, I think. For the PMP side, a lot of times some of the initial objections that we hear for like developing, project managers and PMPs is, oh, this won't work in my neighborhood, or this isn't the way that we do it. And so like those people out there, if you're listening, like Peter and team are like the quintessential, I don't know of a better example. I've never seen it, of people that have taken the concepts respectfully and said, I'm going to learn them, internalize them, challenge how I think about them and what I do in my real life, and then adapt them, not in a, that doesn't work for us. It's like, what will work for us? What needs to work for us? What will serve us? And it doesn't feel like there was ever a moment in your life in this episode of like development that you were like, I'm going to give up. Oh, maybe it doesn't work. Was there ever like, how did you know it was going to work, bro?
Well, actually, like the first time, so I started, and the UC Irvine program was good. It was a really good program. I'm glad I did it. But the first time I ordered the textbooks for it, and the first page of the first chapter that I read, I was like, oh my God, this is a mistake. Like I felt like it was a technical manual. That was probably because I don't want to make it seem like it was all, super.
Yeah, no. We love them.
Took a look at that. I was really intimidated. I mean, really, I was. And so that actually really stuck with me, because I thought to myself, man, if I'm looking at this and it feels like I'm reading like the manual at a nuclear power plant, that's how it's going to feel for other firefighters. And so I want to make sure that they don't have that, like, oh man, like I'm in over my head feeling. So,
right.
I've been really diligent about finding ways to explain, these concepts so that the way they made sense to me. Like, if I can give you an example, one of the things that I really love is when I'm assigning work, like when we're in the third step of you have your project initiation, project planning, project execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing for a waterfall project. But when you're in that execution phase and you're assigning work, hey, you do this, you do this, you do this, it's critical to have an owner. In my experience, it's critical to say, hey, you're the owner of this piece of work. But that's not an alien concept to firefighters, because when we do our CPR certification at the very beginning of your EMT or your paramedic training, when you watch those videos, it'll be like, hey, you do compressions, you call 911, you go get an AED. And what we learned from the very beginning of our EMT and paramedic training is, you don't just say, hey, somebody start compressions, somebody go get an AED, somebody call 911. You say, you do it, and you do it, and you do it. And what that is you're assigning a specific person, hey, this is your job, this is your work, see it through. And so tying it back to things that people already intrinsically understand, like that really, really resonates with people, I've found. And that's how it resonated with me, like seeing these concepts, which, if you zoom all the way out, project management, as I understand it, is just a set of tools to get work done, to get things done. And, so when you look at it like that, give those tools to people in a way that they already understand, and that then it's an easier jump from something they know to this new, or what feels like a new concept, which is just a way to get work done.
Dude, I love this. And then you could have gone the way that said Agile promotes shared accountabilities between roles, that causes like a more robust, system that will drive blah, 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 go on and whatever. I'm not attempting to attack the Agile gods. I love them more than a friend. But like you were explaining it in a way that people are like, oh yeah, I remember CPR. And essentially, you're not even having to use the word shared accountabilities, that like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And we all depend on each other. Like, you didn't even have to use those terms. And that's my inference of what you were like doing. But like, you made it in a way where they're like, I get it. I can put it into practice. And now, that's the way we're going to do it. That's the way we've always done it. So it doesn't feel like to me that you implemented a system that was like, oh, this is totally foreign from Mars. It's new. It's like, oh, we're already kind of doing this, but
Yeah.
maybe we weren't as disciplined. In when you go into a fire, I bet you hold yourself to such a high standard that there's an accountability to each other because your life's on the line and the people that you're trying to save. I'm guessing that there's no negotiation about the quality. Maybe in the projects it wasn't the same way. I'm guessing. But now I imagine that it is to say, like, we have shared accountabilities. We're going to do this. We know what we're going through. It is our system. We're going to be successful. I don't know if I'm jumping too far.
No, I mean, I think you're really onto something there. And I think like another thing too, and that's total, by the way, totally right about the fire. You know, it's the ultimate form of accountability. Um, I think the thing too is with so for fire departments, what we really have is projects are basically a third of what we do, or maybe
Right.
a quarter, but we have projects, programs, processes, and 911 calls. And I
Okay.
think what's important is once we see like, hey, look, this is a big part of what we're doing, and it's how
Mhm.
anything that we do in the fire department, if we stand up a new program, it's going to start as a project. If we want new equipment, that's a project. You want a new fire station, that's a project. You want to change the way we train or log, medication use for the ambulances, that's a project. And so I think for the majority of the workforce, it's just understanding like, look, this isn't something that we're going to start doing. This is something that we
Mhm.
are doing and have been
Yes.
doing. This is a way that we can do it better. And it's not just better
Yes.
for the bean counters, it's better for you, the project manager. It's better for the workforce. It's better for the community that we swore an oath to protect. Because if we can deliver better projects, which save money or save time, that's opportunity. We can take that money and maybe that's the money that we use to buy new equipment. Maybe that's the time
Yes.
we use to train. Maybe that energy that you save not banging your head against the wall on a project, now you can put that energy into something else, maybe a smoke detector initiative or whatever. And
Hmm.
so it's not like this isn't something we do just, oh, like let's just save money for the accountants. Like that's not it at all. Like the ability for us to execute good projects is directly linked to the service we give to our community. And that's why everybody gets into it. I mean, yeah, going to fires is a blast. Yeah, it's exciting. But at the end of the day, you get into it to serve your community. And so this is how we serve our community. It's a big part of what we do.
Dude. And I don't pay taxes in the neighborhood that you live in, but like if I had heard that and be like, oh, goodness me, a public servant who is using the money that is in the tax base for something that is making us better and is a good steward of that capital, putting it into practice. And, from an acceleration and velocity standpoint, you're like, I'm getting more done. I'm doing it the right way the first time, and I'm being able to stack up more opportunities, better trained people, more engaged people, better outreach into the community, all these different programs, more goodness projects. That's like, yeah, that's just much better than just cutting budgets. I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of my favorite quotes, the first time I heard it, one of the things, if you're on an ambulance or you're a paramedic, you do a lot of you do intubations, which is if you have
Mm,
someone that's in cardiac arrest or whatever, you use your laryngoscope and you put a tube down their throat so you can breathe for them. And one of the things you
okay.
get taught right away is set it up the right way because you might only get one shot at this. So make your first attempt your best attempt. Don't like
Yeah.
get in there really quick, try to do it, realize, that didn't work. And then you set all your stuff up right and do it all like do the exact textbook way. Make your first attempt your best attempt. And I that really resonates with me. I believe that.
So like that, man, there's so like, oh, goodness, like when someone's out there going to another industry, they just got to find what resonates with them. And my assumption would be, I don't want to go too much out of like fire departments and such, but it seems as though like there's probably something that's going to resonate. You have plenty of beautiful examples where it's like, yeah, that seems obvious about intubation and all that different stuff. Um, Doing it right the first time, and I love the. So what are you doing now? Like, so you're running projects now. There's so many
Yeah.
different directions we go. I'll try to be good about this. You're writing a book, or you wrote a book. What? Where is it, dude? Like, what have you
Yeah.
done to kind of get this genius down in paper, bro?
Yeah, so I really once I started getting into this, I got really interested in like, is anybody else talking about this? Because I was just like, man, this is such a big part of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I looked into it. I tried to find books on it, like specifically, there's a million project management books, but for my industry, or for even just
Yeah.
like challenges like mine. Because, you know, although I talk about the fire department because that's what I know, you know, just in talking to my colleagues in the police department or the sheriff's department or the 911 agency that we work with and that I was at one time a liaison for, a lot of the challenges are the same. I mean, they have, you know, budget cycles that they have to operate in. They have crisis projects that come up. They have people who get promoted through the organization based on their ability to put fires out or arrest bad
Yes.
guys or answer 911 calls, not necessarily for their ability to manage projects. And so you have people that make their way into middle and upper management that are phenomenal firefighters. They're phenomenal police officers. They're phenomenal 911 dispatchers, but they haven't had
Yeah.
a lot of experience coaching and or competence in these things. And so, you know, not to go too far down the rabbit hole on that, but I found that like, yes, some of these problems are specific to the fire department, but a lot of those challenges are pretty broad throughout public safety or even just local government. So, anyways, to your question, I kind of looked into it, I researched it, and I was like, man, there's just not a lot on project management in the fire department. So I started a podcast with, you know, one of my colleagues who I've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of project management with, and you know, we just got our first couple episodes out there, and I, you know,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'm working on a book called Project Command, and what I wanted to focus on is, you know, kind of what we've been talking about. Hey, look, here's a firefighter's understanding of project management. And it's, you know, I'm not trying to teach engineers how to manage projects or construction guys. I just want, hey, look, I'm a firefighter. That's all I know. I've been a firefighter my entire adult life. Let me talk to you, one firefighter to another, and say, this is how you look at a scope. This is how you do risk forecasting. This is how you monitor and control work. This is how you track metrics from a firefighter's perspective. And then I wanted to give
Yes.
some real world examples because, you know, like I was saying, you get that Rolodex or that slide deck of images, like fires you've been to. If you haven't, you know, there's very few full-time project managers in the fire department. So it's difficult to build that Rolodex and you'd like, oh, this project reminds me of that other one. And so this is what we'll do.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to take the Rolodex that I've built and give it to other people and say, hey, look, you know, this reminds me of a technology project. We did a technology rollout that looked like that. Or, hey, this is a policy development project. This is an architecture project, you know, whatever the case might be. This is a community relations project. And so
Dang.
that's what I was hoping to do is just basically give a firefighter's understanding. We're not going to go super deep on jargon. I'm not going to, you know, overload,
Yeah.
deep principles and all this stuff. It's just like, look, this is the stuff you need to know. And I think
Yeah.
firefighters already kind of feel that way because we use, you know, there's this concept called ICS, which is an incident command
Okay.
structure. And not to go too deep on it, but it's a standardized approach to manage incidents is what it is. And it really kind
Yeah.
of gained traction after 9/11 to get everybody managing incidents the same way. And one of the biggest concepts that you learn in ICS is how to scale it. Because if you go and you have a, you know, God forbid, a plane crash, and you try to manage a plane crash the same way you manage a single vehicle accident, it's too much. It's just too much. So you have
Yeah.
to scale it. How much do you actually need? Do you need it to be this big, or can it be this big? And it's the same
Yeah.
with project management. PMI has, you know, 49 process groups, and I'm totally sure there are projects that are so big and so complicated that you have to do every single one of the 49 process groups. But it's been
Yeah.
my experience in the fire department that most of our projects, you're good with like 10 or 15 of those, 20 maybe.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the bigger the project, the more complicated it is, sure, scale it out, make it bigger, include more. But that's what I want. Like, it's concepts like that I want to explain to firefighters. Like, look, you don't have to do all 49 of these. Like, these are the ones that are critical for us. Now, again, I don't know about other people. Maybe it's different in the engineering world. Maybe it's different for software development. But for us, these are battle tested things that are going to work for us.
Dude. All right. So I got an idea. I got called the other day by someone that works in the doesn't work in fire department, but works in y'all's neighborhood ish in a totally different part of the United States, but works in the police department. And so she is out there, and I don't know if she'll agree, but I think she will. And she's like, I'm working with an IT department. We're learning project management, and I just want to run better projects. And I want
Yeah.
to be able to like talk to them and communicate with them from like the tech side and the police department side. So my idea was you've done such an amazing job in the passion, just like shoots out the screen like robot lasers, dude. It's amazing what you're doing. Um, I'd like to bring her on later. Not right now. I don't, I don't have her in the back pocket right now. But the three of us talk, have her explain the problems that she's having, like, and you and I just see we don't have the perfect answers, but like see if we can just talk and maybe get some ideas across. Are you cool doing that?
Yeah, man, I'd love to. I mean, and yeah, that sounds great. I mean, a lot of the police, I mean, I work a lot. I mean, I'm working
Right.
on 2 projects right now with the police department and our IT department. So yeah, I mean, I think that sounds great.
That's awesome, dude. And for people out there, we'll close it down now. This won't be the last time we'll talk to Peter. This is super great. I am so proud of what you've done, dude. It is amazing. Um, like just keep going. And your team, Duke and the other folks, like such an amazing job. You've taken the concepts, and I think you're just got a living example of the way in which I can't speak for PMI, but I probably could speak for Lee Lambert, like the guy that got it going, the one of the guys that got the PMP going, where he's like, just get out there and do it. He's a do
Yeah,
it guy. And so like you made it your way and speak to the way that the people listen and talk and make it work and just never give up. Everything that you've done is just magical. So like I'm not overstating it. I think it's magical. It's like Disney World magical, dude. So
yeah,
keep going.
I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, it's true. So keep going, dude. And then like I'll set up that other call. We'll go from there. And you've taught a lot of stuff and I just want to just say good job, honestly.
Yeah, thanks. And so first of all, thank you again for having me on. And
Yeah, dude.
I know on my podcast, which is Project Command. The name of the
Yep.
podcast is Project Command. We talk a lot. We're going to talk a lot about like firefighter specific stuff. But if you're in like the local government sphere or even sort of an adjacent field, give it a listen, see if it's for you. And if it's not, no big deal. But give it a listen and see if what we're saying resonates with your work environment. And then, shoot us ideas. We have an email that we've set up for the podcast. Is projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. Projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. Shoot us ideas if you have stuff you want us to talk about. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks. Thanks
And
again.
I do think like so, even if you're not in like the police department, fire department, whatever, I think that listening to it, because I've listened to the first episode, dude. I just started the second one because it just
Thanks,
came
man.
out a little bit ago. I think like listening to things that aren't your neighborhood gives one the ability that's like risk free to just reflect on the way someone else is doing something. Because it's not like, oh, I build software, I build apps with my guys, me personally. It's like if another app, it's like we start working like nerd, talk and, oh, well, we do it differently and it doesn't work like that here. I get too into details. But like if when I listen to your podcast, I think when other people do, they're like, oh, that's an interesting way. Oh, I like that problem. And you're kind of like reading a book and you're like a fun book where you're like, oh, I didn't like you talk about firefighter stuff. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how you do this stuff. Like when you talk, I almost passed out when you talked about intubation. I'm not gonna tell you now, dude. Like I not go with needles. I try not to visualize it, but like it gives you an opportunity to reflect on like, oh, that's how they apply it in a risk-free world, and then you can go, okay, so how could I do that in my world? So I think even if you're not a firefighter, you should listen to it even more. But we'll see.
Well, I really appreciate that. And just like to my, kind of closing thought on that is like one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot is how we have taken the PMI knowledge, which is I think is really great, and then made
Yeah.
it our own. And I think that's
Yeah.
really like the challenge that every industry has, no matter what you're doing, is some people can probably take PMI stuff right out of the box and use it.
Right.
Then it's great. But like if you find that that's not the case and you find you're on a similar journey to me, like how do you take these concepts that PMI has and make them your own? That's some of the things I really want to focus on because that's what I want. Like the people that I'm talking to in the fire service, that's what I want them to see is like, this is how I've made it my own. And you can do the same thing. Like, don't feel like just because, hey, look, this is how Peter does it. You don't have to do that. You can make your own way. So we're going to talk a lot about like how to make it your own and how to take these concepts and like make them fit for your specific work environment.
Dang you. I couldn't say anything better. You just nailed it, bro. I agree 1,000,000,000%. Thank you so much, Peter. We'll talk again. This was amazing. See you later.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.